welcome. Today is our Sunday Fun Day paint afternoon, and in today's painting project, we're going to paint a seascape. I absolutely love painting water, especially seascapes and waves, because water is not only beautiful, it's vital. 70% of the earth is covered in water, and of that 70% of the earth's surface is covered in water. And of that 70%, 97% is oceanic, is seawater, is salt, and saline. So there's only 3% of the world's water that is freshwater, that is drinkable. And of that 3% that is freshwater, half of that is locked up in icebergs, ice caps, and in the ground. So water is beautiful, it's precious, it needs to be protected. Our bodies are mostly made of water, and there's something about being by water that is peaceful and really feels like home. So let's go ahead and take a quick peek at the supplies we're going to use today, and then let's paint and celebrate water. If we have never painted together before, my name is Jessie Robertson from jessierobertson.com, and I'm painting with you today from London, Ontario, which is in Canada. Now I can see all of your comments just over here, so I'm going to try to get to you on our breaks, and I definitely go through them after the event as well. So if you're just tuning in, let me know where you're painting from today. Hello, hello. Excellent. I see Debbie is tuning in from the UK, where it is almost 8 p.m. It's a late night paint night. Okay. So let's talk about the supplies we're going to be using for our seascape today. Today I'm going to be working on a size 11 by 14 stretch canvas, but this project works really well on other sizes. You could do it larger, like the 16 by 20 here, and it also works up really well on a small little 8 by 10, 16 by 20 you can paint on paper. So really you can fit your seascape into almost any size of substrate that you would love to paint on. I'm working on an easel today, but this project works really great just flat on your table or your painting station at home. We're going to be working with a few blue colors today. So I'm using both Ultramarine Blue, which is used in the sky, and Phthalo Blue, which is a really lovely green-based blue that we'll be using to create our water and our wave. It looks a little hard to distinguish them on the palette here, but the darker blue is Phthalo Blue and our lighter blue here is Ultramarine. So Phthalo Blue, Ultramarine, or a dark blue and a light blue if you don't have those exact colors. We'll need several blobs of white to create tints of our colors. And we're also going to create our own sand color, so please have a nice blob of brown. Today I'm working with burnt umber as well as some yellow and red. I'm not going to be using black today. We're going to be darkening all of our colors with complementary colors. For brushes for today, I'm going to be using my favorite set, and that includes a number 12 flat brush, but any large 1-inch wash brush will do. Another great background brush. We are going to be using a number 8 filbert. One of my favorite brushes of all time, the number 6 bright brush. And last but not least, we're going to need some tiny little detail brushes for getting some of our ocean spray. And these are called round brushes. These brushes are fantastic for doing anything that has a curve in it. The larger round brush there is a number 6 round, and the smaller little one there is a number 1 round brush. Now you do not have to have a palette knife today. I did not use a palette knife in the original wave here. I designed the larger one for a paint and sip type of party in 2018, so we couldn't really get into details because people have to see from far away. But today, because we're a little bit more close together because we're live on camera, we can do things like the palette knife. And the palette knife does get some really wonderful organic brush strokes, especially in the tops of our waves. So if you want to have some practice with your palette knife today, if you're new to palette knife painting, waves are a really fun place to explore some of the organic texture making that palette knives can do. So I have a palette knife, and I'm going to show you a few ways to get the texture, the crest, the whoosh part to the top of the wave. So palette knife is one option. If you don't have one, I will show you how to use our brush set here. And if anyone is tuning in that has painted with me before, and if you did the Galactic Orchis painting, I wanted to quickly demonstrate to you what the round blender brush does. This isn't necessary to the tutorial, but the round blender brush, which I encourage people to get for painting these outer space whales that we did together the other week. This is a round blender, and it is one of my favorite brushes. It excels at blending in things like clouds. So I'll show you a few different ways we can get some really fun, soft texture in our clouds on our horizon. You're also going to need a nice jar of water today for cleaning off your brushes. And of course, oftentimes we need to add water right to our paint to make them more runny to work with. And last but not least, I'm going to be working with my trusty blow dryer. You don't have to have one of these, and if you're painting somewhere warm, I see people tuning in from California and from the breezy Huntington Beach. So if it's warm there and you're painting from a beach, you likely won't need one of these. But I like to use these because I live in Canada, and here we're in the middle of winter. So this can help dry our colors in between steps, especially when we're applying thick paint with a palette knife. That's it for supplies, so let's go ahead and start step one of our Seascape. Okay. We're going to be working starting with our sky today. So let's mix up our sky blue and start building in a foundation for our clouds. Please grab for me your number 6 bright brush. And here we go. We're going to begin with our ultramarine. Now I did have someone ask a question in advance. They said they didn't have ultramarine. And I think my auntie actually might be painting today, and she's low on her ultramarine. So ultramarine, if we compare it to the phthalo, it's just a bit more of a purplish blue. So you can go ahead and just tint some of your phthalo blue with your red, or if you have another blue like a cobalt blue. The sky can be so many blues. Personally, I really love the look of some of the purplish blues next to the tealy blues. But please feel free to have fun with your sky, and if you want to approximate ultramarine, just mix a little bit of your red into your phthalo. But we're going to begin with a nice light color in our sky, a nice soft blue. I also put a little bit of a soft pinkish purple in our horizon line. So I love the way that looks. Sometimes the horizon line does pick up a few warmer hues. Even midday shadows of clouds can have a lovely soft pinkish purple to them as well. So let's go ahead and create our sky colors. Grab your number 6 bright brush, and we'll begin with our lightest color, which is that soft pinkish purple. So I've got a nice big blob of white here. A nice big blob, and I'm just using my bright brush. And I'm going to go just the tip into the red. And I'm going to smooth a small amount over, creating a very, very light pastel color pink. Very, very light pastel color pink. Now without washing our brush, we can go ahead and make our soft sky blue. And I have a few different blues. Each of these paintings has a slightly different blue. Here's a bit of a darker tone, this one's a bit of a lighter tone, and this one's in between. So let's just mix ourselves a nice light blue with the ultramarine blue. So I'm going to move over approximately equal amounts of white and ultramarine to start. And please keep some of your plain ultramarine. We may want to have darker areas of our sky as well. So I love working with a color a little something like this. It's kind of a soft powdery blue. And you can see it's got a lovely kind of soft pinkish hue. A soft pinkish hue. Compared to our turquoise, which has a greenish hue. Now I don't want to leave our pink color quite so bubblegum pink, so typically I'll rinse my brush off, and then we'll take a tiny little bit of our light ultramarine sky blue, and let's mix a little bit of this into our pink so it's a bit more moving towards the purple side of things. So we can put a little bit of this softish pinkish purple at the horizon line. Now I really beefed up the pink in this project here. So we can always tweak our pinks to brighten them if that's something that's really working for our painting. So we'll alter our colors and our shapes to suit our own projects. But for now, we're just going to pull in the bones of the painting, the underpainting, and those basic shapes. Once we have our colors mixed, we can go ahead and start our sky. I want to make sure you're all with me. So if you have your ultramarine, your sky blue mixed, and your light pinkish purple for your horizon, send me a big old thumb up in the comment section to let me know that you're ready to roll, and we'll start putting on our clouds. Hello, I see Brianna who's tuning in from Sudbury. Welcome, welcome. Hazel is tuning in from Toronto. I see Lynn tuning in from Wisconsin. I don't see any thumbs yet, so, oh, there's a thumb. I only see one. I want to make sure that you've got your colors the way you like them before we keep on keeping on. In the meantime, here in Canada in Ontario, we've got about almost 3 feet of snow, so it's really gorgeous. Our winter kind of gives one big show in February before the spring thaw starts to happen in March. And it is quite lovely, but this painting always makes me long for beachy days and vacations. Okay, awesome. I see lots of thumbs popping up. So let's go ahead and block out our horizon line. Our horizon line is where the sky meets the water, and typically, especially for these rectangular shaped canvases, I like to work with what's known as the rule of thirds. So choosing approximately a third of the canvas and maybe a little bit of a large third. Ever so slightly more than a third for the sky. So thirds are said to be quite harmonious to the eye, so we'll play with that today. I find using a nice big brush with a wonderful straight edge like the number 12 flat brush or any of these very, very large rectangle square shaped brushes do really well at the horizon line. So let's go ahead and wipe our number 12 flat brush into our soft pinkish purple. And then I want you to push this brush right in at the horizon, give it a bit of pressure, and then glide all the way across. If you're using really heavy body paints, like if you've used the Winsor Newton Galleria paints or the golden paints, which tend to be quite thick, please drip some water into your paint before you pull across. I'm using a paint very much like Liquitex Soft Body, so it's quite thin and it will glide right across for me. So push in where you want your sky to begin and then do your best. You can go at a medium pace. And we're going to go with a straightish line. We're going to go with a straightish line. Oh, making waves already. Nothing is totally straight in nature, so straightish is always good enough. Excellent. I want you to pull in a little bit of this pink across the bottom. And I really love building these clouds up in a few layers. So they don't get this white until the end after the first layer dries. Right now we're going to block in the clouds in some light blue and soften the sky down into them. So please grab for me a nice round shaped brush. I'm going to be working with my number 6 round. On this nice little 11 by 14 canvas, this number 6 round brush makes excellent cloud shapes because you see the tip of it has a natural curve to it. So we can really push those cloud shapes and the edges of clouds. I always think they remind me of popcorn kernels and that kind of thing. So for this painting, we're going to start with a really light blue just so we don't lose the clouds against the white of the canvas. I like having a big one, maybe a medium one, and a little one, and we're just going to blend it right on down into that pink. So here we go. we want to make sure we have a very, very pastel blue. So I'm going to go just the tip into the sky blue. I'm going to mix it into some white. So we have a very, very pastel blue shape here. So very, very small, very, very small. And here we go. I'm going to snuggle in. And let's take one big cloud. I'm going to hold my brush a little something like this. I'm going to fuzz this cloud right into the pink. We can beef up our pink later. So think loosey-goosey organic shapes and just fuzz it up and off the page. Be fun and quirky with your brush strokes here. These are cumulus clouds, like the stratocumulus clouds that are a little bit more closer to the horizon than the ones that are really stormy. So we'll do one, and maybe we'll have another. One of these. If you've picked up too much pink on your brush, and of course when we touch the pink at our horizon here, we pick it up. You may want to tap off your brush or even rinse off. And again, please, if you're using very heavy bodied paint, I want you to add some water here. And notice that these clouds, while they're quite puffy on top, I'm flattening them out at the horizon line. Now clouds, especially when we're looking at these ones, are way, way off in the distance. They tend to puff up, especially our little cumulus, and then they'll flatten out at the bottom. So let's just build in these basic shapes, and don't stress too much about it because we're going to fuzz in the sky color and we're going to shape these up a great deal as we go on. So right now, we just want to create some really basic shapes, and this is going to be the shadow color of the cloud, of course. We're going to be adding white over top of this in a second layer. So we're working from the shadow. And I love painting clouds so much. They're always part of water scenes, clouds. And you can paint them two ways. You can paint them from light to dark, or you can paint them from dark to light. And this way works quite well with this project. So flatten them out at the bottom and just fuzz in these basic shapes. Don't overthink it too much. I'm going to show you where we're going with this. As soon as this part is on, I want you to immediately go into your ultramarine. Now, I wish my spray bottle was here. If I'm somewhere that's quite warm, I often spritz my paints with a spray bottle, and that can really help if you have dry paint problems. We're going to now wiggle the sky color down, and I'm concerned more with the edge of the clouds first before filling in the rest. So I'm going to take some paint, not so much that there's big gobs, but I'm just going to spread a little layer on, and then I'm going to start to come down and into my clouds. And I'm not going to pick up any more paint. You can scrub with the number 6 round brush. So once I've got a thin layer of paint on, I can really kind of push it in and make the edges of these clouds a little bit more misty. And you can definitely pull some little streaks of this blue at the bottom of the clouds to shape up the bottoms. So this number 6 round brush, I'm holding the whole edge like this. It does work really well for clouds. I'm not sure if anyone here has a number 12 round blender. If you do, this brush is pure magic when it comes to clouds. You can dip it right into the paint and it just makes such quick work of it. So and it creates such lovely soft shapes. So if you love painting clouds, this blender brush, it just gets in there. And I think sometimes people mix up a round blender and a mop brush. A mop brush is meant for feathering larger areas, but the blender brush spot blends smaller areas, like little clouds, like just the surface. It's a little bit more stiff than a mop brush. So you can use either brush to great success. You can even use a square shape brush. I've done many clouds, even just using a bright brush. So whatever tool you have, we're just gonna start softening in our sky color now. And this is our first coat. We're gonna be getting back up here to get the layers really juicy. This part of the painting is called an underpainting, where we're blocking out, we're kind of mapping out where we want the elements of our painting to be. And of course, every time we add a new element, it changes the previous ones we put on. So, you know, if your wave is taking up attention, you may want to alter your sky to fill out the space in your composition after. But we have to start somewhere, and this is where we're starting today. Slowly add your ultramarine as you need it. And just relax. This part should be fun. You can move your brush almost in little circle shapes. Almost in little circle shapes as we're forming our sky. And again, don't be afraid to take some of your ultramarine and add it to the bottom, so these clouds are just kind of disappearing into the mist. I know they don't look very distinct yet, but we're going to build them up in rich, rich layers. And we're going to brighten them while keeping them very soft. If you're working on a stretched canvas and you like painting your edges, you can go ahead and paint the edges, just wrapping the colors around the side as you go. You don't have to do this. This is a very commercial artist kind of thing to do. Some people love the look of this instead of framing, just kind of doing a good old wraparound. If I have extra paint, I'll wrap around, but if I don't, I'm never too concerned with my edges. It's the front. It's the front that we want. Whoosh. Okay. Excellent. Once you have your basic cloud shapes blocked in, we're going to move on to blocking out our waves. So when you have your clouds blocked in, and please keep in mind the shaping up with the white, I'm going to enlarge some of these clouds and pull over the really fun shapes where the clouds are essentially always breaking apart and drifting through the sky. So we can't add those on until the background dries. So I always love getting some fun, whimsical shapes in the tips of the clouds. And we'll of course do that after. The second step to our seascape is going to be mapping out the wave. So the darkest, more muted colors far away and moving into these really vibrant, almost see-through teals if we do a wave that hasn't quite crested over yet. So keep working on your clouds and please send me a thumbs up when you're ready to move on to the teals. I see one thumb, but I'm going to wait until I see a few more and then we will keep on together. I can't wait to see your beach paintings, and please feel free, you can share them. We have a Facebook page that I always post in the comments, and we have a really wonderful supportive Facebook group community as well, where we share our paintings and we talk about our successes and frustrations and we show off a little bit. So feel free to join our group as well. Okay, I see some thumbs popping up. Excellent. To show distance in our seascape, we want our horizon line to have our darkest teals, then we'll move slowly into medium teal and the lighter teals where the water becomes thinner and is washing onto the shore. So this is the deep, deep sea, and we're expressing depth through the darkness of the color and a really muted horizon line back here. And we're also going to show depth with size. So we have many smaller, tiny, tiny waves off in the distance, and then they start to get a little bit bigger until we finally get down into our very large wave here towards the front of our painting. So we're going to use both color and size to express distance in our projects. I see Kylie wants a little bit more time. So we can take a minute for a few people to wrap up their clouds. I'm going to show you what we're doing next while we wait. We've got a couple fun ones coming up, including a mini project on water drops. So we're going to be painting some water droplets quite soon. We're going to do this one this coming Wednesday. Spring is coming, so we're thinking about all things water, rain, beaches. So you can feel free to join me. This is going to be a mini session. It's going to be a bit shorter. And then we're going to get into one of my favorite ways to paint with acrylic, which is on paper. Then we'll be doing a little honeybee. This is something totally fun and different. We'll be working with stencils, and we're going to be using raw paper that isn't treated with gesso. And we're going to be watering down our acrylics so that they work just like a watercolor, and we'll be doing some fun staining before drawing a bee, so this will be quite fun. Okay, let's keep on keeping on. Rinse off for me your number 6 bright brush. I want us to mix a very, very light teal. So grab a nice big blob of white. And we're going to start with the blue and then we'll tint it with our yellow to make teal. So dip now into your phthalo blue. Just the tip for me, just a little. Like just the corner of that brush. And mix it in. And mix it in. So this is not quite a pastel blue, but it's quite close. You know, as you're painting your watercolors, please just make colors that make you feel happy or remind you of, you know, the water landscapes that are close to you. I'm just here to kind of map out the techniques, and please feel free to go rogue. Your painting projects should always make you feel happy and pleased with them. So I'm going to start with a nice powdery baby blue color here. And I'm going to tint it with the yellow. I'm going to do this quite slowly because the yellow will turn this green really, really quickly. So I'm going to tap off the excess light blue, and I'm going to go just a little bit. You can always add more yellow, but if you go too fast, then you're going to end up with a really acidic green. I'm going to work with this little bit of yellow, and ooh, yes, okay. Now it's almost like a pool blue, and this is the exact color I was hoping for. So this is my light teal. This is my light teal. We're going to do the same thing, but we're going to make a medium teal. So light, medium is this kind of darker color in the underbelly of the wave, and then into the dark, dark, dark stuff. So medium teal, same thing, only this time, start with the base of a bit of a darker blue for me. So start with the base of a darker blue. Tap off the excess paint on your napkin or your rag. And then let's grab again we're starting with a darker blue, so we can add ever so slightly more yellow this time to make it a really nice teal color. And then we're going to mix that yellow in. You know, for the medium teal, I like to go something that's actually fairly close to the apron color I'm wearing. Maybe a little bit more on the green side. I'm feeling the greeny blues today. It's like a rock the peacock blue. It's like a squeal for teal kind of blue. Okay. Once you've got your medium teal, we're going to make some pure dark teal. Now please save a little bit of your plain phthalo blue for later. We're going to use a little bit of our plain phthalo blue at the very horizon. So I'm going to move over some plain dark phthalo blue for later. Or you could pour out a little blob when you need it. And then once again, grab some of that yellow and mix it into your dark blue. And it should look like a deep, almost black kind of swampy green. So the darkest teal is dark. You could add a little tiny bit of your medium teal just so you can assess that color. But your darkest teal should be really quite dark. I've got something on a lovely green side. This is a beautiful dark color. It's a wonderful dark color. And once you've got your 3 teals mixed up, we're going to start blocking out our waves. Yes, my wonderful partner brought me the spray bottle. So this is what I love to use if I'm working with heavy body paints. So I'm not always having to scoop in water. You can, of course, get slow drying paints, and you can get special mediums that slow the dry time of your paints as well. But if water is working for you, it's free. So I would just give them a good old spritz. Always make sure when you're spritzing, if you've got a fresh painting, to lift it up. Because if I were to get water on something that hadn't fully dried, it can actually lift the paint before it cures. But spray bottles are handy dandy. Handy dandy. Okay. DA says the Gulf of Mexico waters are more green. Yeah, just go ahead and add more of your yellow to your phthalo blue. The reason I love mixing my own teal as opposed to buying the teal is I can really customize my colors the way I like them. So yeah, I'm using fairly greenish teals today, but please feel free to tweak your colors by adding. You can also make teal by adding green to your blue as well. Okay. So here we go. We're going to start mapping out our water. Rinse off for me your number 6 bright brush and your number 12 flat brush. We're going to first go across our horizon line with our really dark teal color. So I want us to have our bright brush, our square shaped brush, ready to go. But let's begin with that flat brush. Give it a nice hefty rinse in its watery home. Squeeze off excess water, and then also tap off excess water. I want this color to be incredibly dark at the horizon line here. So we're going to do the same thing we did with the light pinkish purple horizon using that 12 flat. We're going to wipe into our color to preserve the flat edge, press, and then slowly pull. Please add water to your paints if they're heavy body. We want this to glide easily across the surface of our painting. So I'm just wiping in here. Just wiping in here. I'm going to push in till my line's where I want it to be and pull, pull, pull. You can wrap your color right around the side edge if you like that look. If you have incredible challenges with straight lines, painter's tape can be incredibly helpful. So once your sky is dry, whenever I'm looking for an incredibly straight edge, I will just take some painter's tape, pull the dry sky over, and then you can paint down below. But for this painting, I think it looks good if there's, maybe some choppy waves on the horizon. Okay. So we've got our horizon line where we want it. Now we want to plot out where we want our water to connect with our sand. So you can put your 12 flat back in its watery home, give it a little rinse so it's ready for the next time you need it. And the horizon line, the water line where the water is washing up onto the shore. I guess this is the shoreline. It has some waves to it. So this is where this wave, waves are tubular. They crest up and they crash down. They crest up, they crash down, and then they push this water up and onto the beach where it gets a little bit thinner. Now I have some fairly choppy water, some big waves in this painting here. So I want to have a fairly aggressive shoreline. I'm going to be using a nice rounded shape brush because I want some of these round shapes where the horizon line is coming up and then whooshing onto the shore. So we've got some almost wave type shapes. So bumps, bumps, just a couple. So take a quick peek at the horizon line here, or of course if you're working from a photo maybe of a beach that you love and you're trying to match that, just look at the horizon line, the shoreline here, and look at the shapes of the water as it pushes up onto the sand. But they do tend to come up in these soft curve shapes towards. I had a less aggressive curve in this painting here. Let's go into our light teal, our lightest teal, and now sketch on our horizon line. Again, I typically start at the third line, and then maybe pull down a few waves as they come onto that shore. So we have a map for where our water is going to fit into. It's going to fit into this area here. As soon as you have mapped out your horizon line and your shoreline, I want us to block in the top of where our wave is going to be. I want us to block in the top of where our wave is going to be. My wave is quite low in this painting. And in this painting here, I really brought my wave up. I was quite aggressive with the palette knife in this painting, so it has some really fun, we'll call it aggressive cresting at the top of this wave. This is a real action shot. It's quite quick and gestural. So we're actually going to take our lightest teal for right here, and we're going to draw where we want the crest to sit on top of. So we're going to draw this line, so we'll want to consider that we're going to have some white stuff on top of this for the crest. The reason we're going to start with our lightest teal here is this wave isn't quite crested over. This wave is going to get lighter at the top and darker towards the bottom because the wave stretches up from the deeper water and it becomes thinner before it crests over. So again, those waves are a tubular shape. So they're stretching up from the body of water up, and then they start to crest over, creating that tube shape. So the waves in these paintings have come up and they're just starting to crest over. They haven't fully whoosh and swooshed over. And as they pull up and up from the water, they get thinner and they get a little bit more see-through, allowing light to shine through. Thus we get quite a bit more of these lighter colors at the surface of our wave. So if you want a big wave, you can give it a really big bump, but we're gonna go right across here now. So I'm gonna stick with my number 6 round brush, and I'm gonna have my wave crest about here today. So I'm gonna have a big crest. I'm gonna flatten it out again. Now this is just kind of a road map to where things are going to be in our painting. So here we go, up, then down. Once we have the general shape of our wave, of our body of water planned out, we're going to start filling in the colors from back to front. So we're going to be starting to get slowly lighter as we come towards the surface. So right now we're going to be filling in the water that's in behind. And we're going to go over that dark teal, making it really dark, and then we're going to move to the medium teal. And you'll have to pretend for me that the white isn't there on the crest of this wave. We're going to move into our medium teals and we're going to nestle that right up to the lightest part of this wave. We will not be bringing in the details of the crest until later in our painting, so you'll have to imagine the fun crest really pulling this painting together is not going to happen until a little bit of a later step. But for now, let's start filling in just the area that's in behind the wave, moving nice and fairly horizontal from our darkest teal up into our medium teal as it hits the top of the wave that we just painted in. Whenever we are doing straight lines, having a square or rectangular shaped brush is incredibly helpful. So I'm going to be working with my number 6 bright brush here. Okay, here we go. So let's start with our darkest color, our really purely dark teal. And if you didn't like the color of your dark teal, just feel free to alter it. I mean, you can get some plain phthalo blue in there too, even if you just want a bit of variety. So side to side with our dark color. And then I'm going to go right into my medium color without rinsing so that I can blend it up. And I can start doing some little streaks side to side as I blend up into my darker teal. This is a small painting, it's a small area. So I'm not using huge amounts of paint. I'm just filling in side to side. Here's a little bit of the plain phthalo blue back there. Ooh, I love these colors, don't you? They're pleasing ocean color. I live in Ontario. We have many Great Lakes, many bodies of fresh water here, but we do not have ocean. And my mother lives in Boston, and there they have ocean. And it's really quite lovely. It's a totally different experience, going from a lake to an ocean. Now remember, we'll be altering the crest of this wave a little bit later on, but for now let's just go dark to medium. So I've got this nice juicy layer on. And you could go into some of your darker teal and pull in some little streaks. It's going to start to mix down, but you can still get little bits of texture by feathering quite lightly and not pushing too hard. So just getting some little streaks of your darker color. Getting really, really rich color in this area we can't do until the first layer dries, because wet paint wants to blend in with other white paint. It just kind of starts to smoosh together. But we can feather in some really subtle waves back here in a slightly lighter color while we're hanging out. So in this painting I took my teal with quite a bit more blue in this project. So I took a little bit of my medium teal and I mixed it with some of my lighter teal to get an in-between color, one that would show up a bit. And I started to pull in some little streaky deakies of waves off in the distance. So just these, remember they're going to get quite a bit smaller towards the back. So I'm going to stick with my number 6 bright brush, and I have a lot of medium teal in here, so I need to make something that's a tiny bit lighter. So just where these two colors are touching, I'm going to mix a little bit of light teal with medium teal. We'll get a bit of an in-between teal. And I might take some little bits and pull in a few waves. So maybe a long one, some bigger ones here. And I'm just using the side of my square shape brush. So I'm going to use the side of my square shape brush and I'm going to pull back and forth really fast and loose. You can sometimes get a nice dragging motion, almost like a palette knife. So these ones are fairly close to us. They're closer. And now we're going to get some that are a little bit smaller. If you decide to go, back further, we want to get smaller. And keep these loosey-goosey and organic. Make sure they're not perfectly stacked. Patterns in nature and waves are going to be random. They're not going to be stacked like lines on paper. We want them to be. So I try to keep my brush really, really loose when I do these. And don't be afraid to pull some in now, because if you don't like it, you can paint them out later and it will just add to that texture. So please go ahead and have fun with some distant waves at this point in your painting. So here is where we're at. We want to pull in our water in the distance. And after this, we're going to be moving into the midsection to our wave. That's quite a bit closer to us. So we're going to start working on that wave. The wave is going to be dark where it's closest to the water. And we're going to do a little bit of spot blending, a little bit of tiny blending. We're going to blend from the dark underbelly of the wave. And we're going to make it a little bit lighter as it gets towards the top. So this spot blending we're going to be starting to pull in the colors. You have to pretend all the fancy white crest isn't here. We're going to start with our darkest teal. And we're going to blend it up into our lighter teal before getting into the really light tiny details of the crest that's thinly washing onto the sand. So we're going to get into the big guns here. So remember, the part of the wave that is dark is because it's recessed. It's because it's recessed. So again, when we think about the waves, we want to think about them pulling up from the water and then whoosh. So they come back, and the part that's at the back of the wave here is going to be dark, and then it's going to start to get lighter towards the top where it gets quite thin, and then whoosh, they crest over. Now in this painting, the wave is fully crested over. So all we see is a little bit of the darkness underneath, and this is already crested over and it's about to push up onto the shore. So we don't get to see that wonderful part at the top of the wave that's a bit more see-through in a wave like this. This one's already crested over. So always want to be thinking about that tubular shape. How many times can I say tubular in today's tutorial? Love that word. I don't get to say it as often as I like. Okay. So here we go. Let's start blocking in those colors. Brushes that work really great for this are going to be medium-sized brushes like your number 6 bright brush or your number 6 round brush. And you may want to play with both brushes to see which one you like best if you already don't have a favorite brush for blending in little areas. Whatever we're working on, we want to make sure the brush fits well into that space. So on my little 11 by 14, my number 6 bright brush or my number 6 round brush are going to work quite well. I want to rinse them off, rinse, 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 and then tap off on my napkin. So let's work with one of these two fellas here. Let's work with one of these two. And here we go. I often like to make my lighter, a small bit in my lighter teal, a little bit more green. So I'm going to go just a tip into some yellow. And I'm going to make some of my lighter teal a little bit more green. Okay. So we're moving on into our midsection. And so it's a little bit more green up here. I'm going to come over the top of the wave again with some fresh wet paint. There's a light teal and a really green color. And I'm using my square shape brush here. Okay. And then I'm going to go just the tip into some medium teal. I've just pulled the smallest little bit onto my brush. And I'm going to pull a little bit of that below, just right underneath. I don't want too much paint there because I want to fuzz this up. If you are brand new to painting, blending in smaller areas can take a little bit of practice. So please, for me, start with just a little bit of paint and then tap your brush off. I want just enough paint that we can soften it, like really scrub it up into there. You can always lighten it again later, but let's get that fade, a little fade from the medium color to the light color. Now we're going to do it one more time with the pure dark color on the bottom before this dries. So I know this part's a little bit fast, but I think you've got it. We're just blending from dark to light from the bottom of that wave. So I'm going to add a little bit of my pure dark teal right underneath, all the way across for me. Just enough paint that I can coat across in a line. Wrapping around, just cause. And then I just want to blend the amount of paint that's on there up. So I'll often just tap my brush off so there's not too much extra. And then I use the whole corner side. I'm just going to fuzz it up. I don't want to get rid of the stuff at the top. I just want to blend very softly where these two colors meet. And it can be a bit messy. There can be some lines. It doesn't have to be a perfectly smooth blend. There can be lines like this, even. You can get your finger in there. If you have that blender brush, the round blender that I showed you earlier, from if you did the Galactic Orcas with me, that brush is, again, kind of a dream for blending small areas. But whatever you have, use whatever you have. The exact brush doesn't matter. But we're just going to blend up. Whatever technique there is, it's guaranteed that you could get it done with any number of brushes. When I suggest brushes, it's because some of them do make techniques more easy, but many brushes can do the same job. And it's often a matter of preference. Okay, once you've got this blend on, you've done the hardest part of our water. So we're going to get into the stuff washing onto the shore, moving into our lighter colors. And you can stick with whatever brush is your fave. I'm going to keep on with my number 6 round. I'm going to go right into that light color. I'm going to start filling in the shore. So right underneath this wave, to make the dark stuff pop out, we're going to go right into a little bit of our light color again. And we're just going to really kind of messily soften it in. It doesn't have to be perfect, and there can definitely be some little side-to-side streaky deakies. So soften some of your light color into the bottom of your dark wave. And as we come down to the shore, whoosh, with our light color, whoosh, we're going to use mostly our light color and a little bit of our medium color. We don't want any hard lines here, so I do want it just to gently soften into that dark wave. We're going to get a lot of our medium teal. We also want to have our light teal. We also want to have a little bit of our medium teal in there. And what we're going to get as the water comes up is little tiny ripples and waves. So we may have a little wave here in our medium teal. And then oftentimes it's just a few little squiggles. So I'm just using the tip of this brush and I'm going to do a few little squiggles. They could be round shapes like the shape of water coming up. You could do almost like soft diamond shapes up here. But I just want you to roughly squiggle in some of our medium teal with some of our light teal, keeping it light, keeping it soft. And we are going to beef this up with some sea foamy details in the next phase. Make sure you filled in all the areas with color. Remember, the most important thing is getting the general map of value on. And value is lights and darks. So we're pulling in the general values and sizes of things to create a map of general shape, color, lightness, and darkness. So this is the hardest part of the painting. And when you're just starting to paint, this is what people often call, and I don't like calling it this, but people will call this the ugly part of the painting. It's called the underpainting. So it's a general map and it tends to look a little bit messy, but it's always amazing how just a few details, crests, highlights, and shadows can turn just a basic map of a painting into solid depth, like three-dimensional objects like waves. So we'll be pulling in our details to block this out. But once you have your general map of the water, from the smaller waves in the back that are darker to this little blend in the foreground, send me a thumbs up. The next thing we'll be doing is pulling in our sand color, and then it's all about tweaky deakies from there. We'll be pulling in just little tiny bits of white into our clouds, tweaking our colors or any areas that maybe need a second coat, and then pulling the crests on. So we have sand, sky tweaky deakies, and then water tweaky deakies. So again, just send me a thumb up in the comment section if you're live, when you're ready to move on, and we'll wait till we see several thumbs coming in. Okay, excellent. I see a few thumbs. While we're waiting, I wanted to show you our next painting. So Honeybee is going to be March 13th, I believe. The water droplets is going to be coming this Wednesday. But then we also booked our end of March YouTube Live, which is going to be patio lights. And this is what you guys voted on in our poll. So we're going to do some patio lights. We're going to get our summer vibe on. We're going to do a few more clouds and some silhouette work in trees. So maybe you'll be able to join me for this one as well. Whenever I'm painting, I love to have my favorite things around, my favorite warm beverages. I always have my plant friends in my studio and my little cat. Oh, the coffee is good. It's Sunday fun day. Sunday relax with a coffee and paint day. Okay, I see quite a few thumbs here. My horizon line is still a little bit wet, believe it or not, but we're not going to get there just yet. We do want to mix our sand color. So I'm going to be mixing the sand color with my number 6 bright brush. So take your square shaped brush, give it a good rinse. You're going to need a nice sized dollop of white for this. Rinse, 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 rinse. Rinse off your number 6 bright brush and we're going to make our sand color. So sand is a tannish brown kind of color, and there are all kinds of sand, all different colors of sand. Sand is made up of tiny little particles of rocks, of seashells, of even little bits of beach glass in there. So, you know, there's white sand, there's even black sand. So you can have fun with customizing your sand color if you want to recreate a beach from a place that is meaningful or special to you. But I'm going to go with the traditional golden sand color. This one is a little bit warmer. It's got a little bit more of orangey undertones. This one is a little bit cooler, and I toned it down with a little bit of blue to make it more of a cool tone. But the base is essentially brown. So we'll be starting with burnt umber, and let's get the value that we want before we tweak our color. So we want to get it to the right lightness or darkness. So let's take some of our white, and this is a very small area of our painting. Take some of our white and then add a nice scoop of your burnt umber, and we're going to mix that in. I typically like to start with a bit of a darker color and then use some of a lighter color to create a bit of texture in the sand. So burnt umber is a very cool brown. Burnt umber is a very cool brown. So it almost looks like chocolate milk or hot chocolate. Okay. Now we're going to tint this with some of our yellow and then some of our red. So remember, when we're customizing the hue of our color, we want to do it very slowly so we don't take it too far. I'm going to add a little bit of yellow, and it's going to make a nice tan, a nice kind of golden tan color. But I like going just the tip, like the smallest little bit of red in there too, and that will give it a bit of a sienna kind of color to it. A little bit more. So just adding it really slowly. If it gets too pink, you're just going to need to add a little bit more yellow to warm it up. I'm quite happy with my sand color here. It's a nice tan color. And I see someone has it unbleached titanium? Patty has a color unbleached white. Yeah, unbleached titanium is a great color. It's a cream color, so you could use that as a base. It's going to be quite white and cool, and I love the way a little bit of warmth in the sand color plays with the blues and the greens. But yeah, please feel free to start with your unbleached titanium as a base. It's a wonderful start to a tan color. So you can tweak your color by adding yellow and red, and mixing sand, like mixing any of our own colors gives us more control over our colors, and it's great fun because oftentimes when we're trying to get one color, we mix another color, and even if it's not the color we want in our painting today, now you know how to mix that color for another day. So I remember I forget what I was trying to mix, but I mixed bright cadmium orange with brilliant blue. I did not get the color that I wanted, but I was shocked at how much of a beautiful steely gray color I got, and now that's my favorite color for doing clouds with. And this is a couple decades ago, and I still remember that color because I was surprised at mixing it at its beauty. Okay, so this is a sandy color. We want to have a sandy color, but we also want to have a darker color. So as the water comes up over top of the shore, the water has some volume to it. So we want to have a bit of a shadow underneath the water. Underneath the water where it's washing onto the sand, it's casting a bit of a shadow there. So this shadow color, I usually use a little bit of the sand color and I tint it with some medium teal, maybe some brown. It's kind of a grayish, greenish brown. As long as it's darker than your actual sand color, it's going to work. So we need a little bit of a shadow color. So let's take a scoop of our tan, add a little bit more burnt umber, and I mean just touch it, and then ever so slightly a bit of that medium teal. It's going to be a funky grayish brown, but it will be a great shadow color. So it should be a kind of a grayed out color that's a bit darker. So here's the shadow color. And we're going to pull this where the water is coming across, will be coming across the sand. So let's get a bit of a dark color on up in here. See, it's kind of a grayish, brownish color. Wrap it around the sides if you want to be consistent. So we want to keep that area dark. And then we can fill in with the rest of our sand color. Sand is often quite light. So here's my sand color. It's fairly dark, so I can mix I grabbed some red. I can mix bits of my sand color with some white right on the canvas and get some fun texture. So some sand and some white. Blend this right up in towards the base of your wave for me. You can wrap your colors right around the sides. And of course, if you're wrapping around, now's a great time to pick up your canvas and paint your bottoms. Once I fill it all in, sometimes I like to go over with my shadow color again teal to my shadow color. Just keep it soft. Our sand should still be wet, so easy to keep it soft. So this really pops that wave out, giving it a bit of depth. So whenever you're painting water, when you're painting from a photo, or even if you're just making up a beach from your imagination, you can absolutely add this shadow in, and it's going to give a little bit of depth to your beachy wave paintings. As soon as you have your sand on, please send me a thumb up in the comment section. We're going to keep on keeping on together. We're going to move back up into our sky. So once you have your sand on, we have got the bones of our entire painting ready. Excuse me. We've got the bones of our entire painting ready, and we're getting on to the part where we're just tweaking things and really bringing them to life. So let's wait for a few thumbs. I want to make sure that most of us are ready to keep on keeping on. The next step is going to be, of course, beefing up our clouds. And I don't know about you, but I have some area. I'm not using my most expensive paints today, so they're a little bit patchy. So my Ultramarine Blue has some areas that need a second coat, and we're definitely going to get in with the white and shape them up. Doo-doo-doo. I see Betty in the comments, she's counting the minutes to when I can paint myself in the sand at Iberwash, or plant myself in the sand. Yeah, Iberwash is a beautiful beach. I see Art Creates wants to do a forest painting. I see Gifted tuning in from Jamaica. Hello. You've got beautiful beaches down there. Good. We've got a few thumbs popping up, so let's just wait for a few more. If we've never painted together before, I always try to keep my tutorials in 2 to 2.5 hours. So a lot of people really like to take their time, and they'll do their paintings over 5-6 hours. Some people even break them up over a few days if they're busy, or if they really like zoning into their painting. So there's no right or wrong amount of time to do a painting, and you should always enjoy your painting day and do it the way that allows the best learning and enjoyment and fun for these tutorials. Other people work in a way where they watch the tutorial and then they do it from memory later, and they find that allows them to absorb the techniques and then really focus on their own projects. Other people like to work really quite quickly, so they prefer to watch in the replay. I have a bunch of people that paint on tiny canvases, little 5x5s or playing cards. We have one lady that does the tutorials, and she paints like 10 little cards all at one time, and she works really quickly, so she likes to fast forward through the steps quite fast. So everyone works in a different way, and everyone's way should be unique to them and their goals with painting. Okay. Ruth says sand in Cuba is like icing sugar. I bet. I know some people who just love it down there where you are. Okay. So let's keep on keeping on to the next step, and let's beef up our sky. Now, my favorite brush for clouds, if you do not have a round blender, if you do have a round blender, this little fella makes magic marks. It was not one of the listed brushes for the tutorial, but it is one that we just used for painting our galactic orcas. If you have a round blender, bust it out. If you don't, let's go ahead and use our regular round brush, our number 6 round. And then we'll want to have, just for cleaning up, if we want to do any tweaky deakies at the horizon line, we'll want a square shape brush for there. So we want one round brush, and we want our square shape brush, our number 6 bright brush, for cleaning up the horizon. Okay. Let's talk about tweaking those clouds. So if you love your blue color, stick with the blue that you have. I'm going to start with this number 6 round brush, and I'm going to go into my sky blue. I may lighten it a little bit, just a little. And I'm going to go over any areas that are a little bit patchy before pulling in the white for the clouds. So it doesn't have to be everywhere, but you can really see up close how some of my blue is quite patchy. So I'm just going to come in, and I'm using the whole side of this brush. I'm just going to shimmy a thin layer of blue anywhere that needs it. Just doing some tweaks. Now the darker the blue in your sky, the more it pops your clouds out. So if you have a lighter sky, it's going to look quite soft. If you have a darker sky, it's going to look more dramatic. So just a thin coat here. Doesn't have to be thick. So I have just gone over all my blue with a thin layer, and my clouds are still peeking out there. And now I want to clean up below the clouds using some of my pinks. So let's rinse off our brush, rinse, rinse, rinse. We'll want that round brush in the next step for whitening the clouds, but for now, you can use some of your pinks. Use a nice square shaped brush. Add a little bit of water to help this flow, especially if you have hard body paints. And please feel free to spritz if you've got that spray bottle. Just don't get your sand wet. You'll want to lift that painting if you're going to spritz it with a spray bottle. Okay. So you got a little bit of a pink. And then let's just go across that horizon line again. So just push in and pull, use water to help it flow. I like having a pink where, you know, it's like, is it pink or is it not pink? It can be really quite subtle where people aren't quite sure if you've got the pink in there. So pull the blue in and pull the pink in. If you've got one, we can take a sip of our favorite drink. DA said, I enjoyed the galactic orcas immensely. Oh, wonderful. That's good. Yeah, I love that painting too, and everyone did incredible paintings with that project. It was outer space background with a mama and baby orca kind of loving each other at the end of the universe. We did that one for Valentine's Day over on my website. So we do 2 free live paintings every weekend. I do 1 to 2 a month here on our YouTube channel. I do about 4 over on our Facebook Live, and I do 4 right on my website. I was actually using an old Galactic Orca painting to practice some of the brush strokes for the palette knife. So I think I have one lying around here somewhere. I should. Oh yeah, here she is. I had quite a few of these, so this is one of the duds, and I was using it to practice the palette knife. Palette knives are fun. We're gonna get in there. We're gonna, make some waves. A little bit later on. This would be a big wave. We're gonna make ourselves some little waves using just the side. Using just the side. You can get really thin lines with your palette knife as well. And they kind of create a dragging look when we want really small ones. These poor orcas. Okay. So let's keep on keeping on with our sky and getting into the white part. Grab your number 6 round brush, and we're going to need some pure white for this. We're going to need some pure white. I want you to start with a fairly wet brush, and we're going to use small amounts of white. So I'm going to move a little bit of white over where I can add a little bit of water to it, especially if you've got heavy body paint. We want this to be really subtle and to just softly blend into our background. So we're going to take some white, add a little bit of water, and I've got some paint on the tip of my brush here. I've got quite a bit of paint. I want you to add more paint when you need it, but let's start quite slowly. So one way to avoid those kind of cartoon, really solid, puffy looking clouds and to get more of that soft look like they're just breaking apart on the horizon, we want to go quite slowly. So to get the soft look, we're going to use just a little bit of paint that is a bit more on the runny side. It's a little bit more fluid. So here we go. I've gotten a little bit of runny paint. I'm going to tap off on my napkin. And be mindful, if you're like me, I really use my napkin quite thoroughly. So if I tap in the teal, I pick up the teal, and I've done that so many times, it's a pain in the butt. So let's just take a bit of paint, tap a lot of it off so there's just a little bit on. And I like to start with a little bit of white in the middle of the cloud, so just a little. And then take most of it off your brush, and we're going to use that brush. Flatten it out on the bottom, just slowly dissipate off into the distance. And here we can really pull our cloud up and over, and we can change the edges of it now. So now we can come up if we want any fun kind of quirky shapes. This is where they are going to come alive. Add more white as you need it. And now that you have your waves on, you can think about your clouds adding to your composition. We want them to kind of just disappear into that little bit of pink on the bottom. Yeah, I thought this one was maybe kind of wisping apart. You can have little random puffs, so these little bits that are maybe breaking off from our cloud can add some fun energy to the painting too. And now because my background blue is still a tiny little bit wet, I pick that up on my brush. So I do want to rinse off every so often in between clouds. So rinse and tap before going back into your white. And you can get more brazen with your white if your white barely touched it, you can always add more, but it's great for this kind of look to err on the side of caution. So I just pull in a little bit, and then I use that brush and I'm gonna pull up. And this is just that number 6 round brush. I like to flatten it out on the bottom fairly quickly. This is the number 6 round. If you have one of those round blender brushes, so the number 6 round comes to a point, regular round brush, whereas these brushes do not come to a point. These brushes open up and they are multiple bristles and they're very soft, and you can just dance across and it gets really crazy and awesome organic texture. So this brush for clouds is, I'm going to show you here. So I've got a bit of white paint on there, and I'm just going to come up. And it softens just so nice. So this is another type of round brush. So I got sand color in there. So if I wanted to make this a huge cumulus cloud, this brush just pushes the paint around. In little tiny circles, and big storm cumulus brewing. How's it going with your clouds out there? Hopefully you're getting some nice fluffy puffies breezing by. You know, I think clouds, like painting trees, they can sometimes take a little bit of finessing. And while they do come naturally to some, clouds typically take lots of work and practice to get them where we want them. And this is just one way of painting clouds in the horizon. I think it's quite fun. You can take your round brush and do little fluffies, a little bit more high altitude clouds up here, maybe some little ones breaking apart. It's your sky, so make it as busy or as serene and still as you would like. Once we fill in our clouds, we're going to start adding some of the crest texture to the top of our wave, our main wave, and maybe a little wave and as we crest down here. We're getting into the last few phases of our painting once we've softened in our clouds. We're going to be doing the white detailing in our water. And then, I don't know about you, but I often like to do another coat on my sand. If I started with really pale sand, I like to add a few little divots in shadow so it doesn't look too flat, so it looks a bit more natural. Like me today, I got quite dark sand, so I'm going to add some lighter bits to really bring it out. So the last two steps, of course, will be cresting and then tweaking our sand. And I'll show you how to spot splatter on the wave to add some really fun dynamic cresting in there as well. So here we go. I do want to show you a part of the wave that hasn't crested over. That is one of my favorite techniques to do for waves, and it can really help take your waves to another level of texture and realism, and that's adding, if you take a look at these bands of lighter color, it's not quite white, I used a really light teal here, kind of coming down the wave. Some of them branch off a little bit, almost like little H shapes coming up, a bit of the curvature of the wave. So that's sea foam. So there's little bits of sea foam, especially as we get closer to the shore. We got these bits of sea foam that start to wash up. So those are being pulled up into the wave. And those can really help make our waves look a bit realistic. So I want to show you this up close for a second. So we're going to get some of that sea foam coming up the wave. And we've got little bits of highlights in sea foam also towards the crest. So I like to kind of curve up, but we don't want them to be all symmetrical. So we can't have just 1, 2, 3. We want to make them a bit more organic. So while I do follow the tubular shape of the wave, I give them some wibbles, and sometimes I pull little bands across like this here. So just take in this texture for me. Okay. So let's get some of those details in there. It helps to get them in before we pull the crest down. And then we can start with a color that's closer to our wave, and then as we get a feel for the shape, so we can use a color that's not as committal as our lightest color. So we can mix a little something in between. So we can mix a little bit of a light teal that's a little bit more medium, but we do need to add quite a bit of water here. I want this to be really runny, so make it almost as runny as cream or as milk. The reason we want to make our paint more runny here isn't just so that it's fluid, it also dilutes the paint and it makes it more see-through when it dries. So I'm using a really light kind of mint green teal. And if we like some of these, we can make them even lighter after. It's super runny, and just to be even more non-committal, so we're going to add a really light pattern, and then when we get something that we're feeling that we like, we can beef it up from there. So I'm going to tap most of this runny color off on my napkin. I'll show you these shapes, and then when we get shapes that we like, we'll do some more. So my wave is a tube, so I'm gonna hold my brush a little bit further away, and I'm gonna come down my shape. Maybe do almost like a funky H. You can have some lines that do kind of come straight across as well. So this is our sea foam. And you can kind of fuzz these out a little bit too if you like. Do some little dots in there. Just keep it super loose for me. And I find it takes a little practice to get these looking organic. But modeled waves are really fun too. Just go slow, keep them light. So kind of right from the base of the dark part of the wave. And you know, you could do like a backwards H shape, just so we're not getting all the same. Okay. So this is how it looks up close. And as we get the other elements in our wave, these are going to be really important. You know, while we're here, so this is the wave coming up. We can have a few long skinny lines down below where the wave starts to flatten out. Just adding some textures down here. Keeping some of these flatter squiggles down below. Remember we had flatter squiggles down below. And we'll do some of this in white. So we're modeling our wave a little bit, giving it some detail. Before we pull the crest on, I want us to get a little bit more of that greenish color in the very tip of our wave. So that's our light teal with just a tiny little bit of yellow. So keep this color like a light kind of yellowish teal. I love using a color, a little something like this. And let's just come to the top of the wave and let's do some little taps. You can keep it soft by kind of scrubbing it in, and add a little bit of water if your paint's really thick. Maybe put a few bits of this really lemon limey color down below too. Almost like long squiggly shapes. While we're waiting for this to dry, we can go ahead and tweak our sand. So for this sand, I had it a very similar color like I have today, a really toasty almond color. And I went over top with some long streaks of a little bit of a lighter sand color, just so there was a bit of texture in there, just so it wasn't all the same color. And in this painting, it got really light, so I did the opposite. And I had a really light color. Hopefully you can see that there. And I pulled some long, it's almost like bars of sand. You know, the water is really washing over. It's created some ripples in the sand. So in here, I took a dark color and I pulled in some lines So there's many ways, many patterns that happen in sand. I actually quite like this sand. It's really loose and abstract, but from far, when you pull it back a bit, it starts to take on those textures. And that's one of the most magical things about painting, is up close, they're just kind of like messy brush strokes, and then you pull it back and it's like, lovely. The makings of a stormy sea. Okay. So let's tweak our sand. I'm going to need a little bit more white. I don't know about you. I got this huge bottle of Winsor & Newton paint, and I love it. But the lid. This stuff's amazing. It's so opaque. Okay. So I'm going to mix a bit of some lighter sand. And I'm not going to cover everything. I like using my round brush. I'm going to let some, just going to kind of dance across the surface, letting some of that undercolor.
Sorry, I don't know that, but I do have a skill you might like. It's called freeze dance. Wanna try it?
Thanks, Alexa. We'll freeze dance later. She's listening. That's so funny. She'll chime in at the oddest times, almost always during a live painting. So now's the chance to command that sand, get it to the color and texture that you want it. As soon as you're done your sand, we're going to get into cresting those waves. So when it comes time to adding crest on top of the waves, we can use our brush. I usually use my bright brush or my little number 1 round brush. Or if you've got your palette knife, we can play with that a little bit today. So here are the brushes, the tools that I love playing wave crests on with. So you could use a palette knife, a square shaped brush, or even a little number 1 round. And sometimes I use all 3, depending on where I need a little bit of a finer line or just some random fun texture. So I'll show you a few of these waves up close again. So for this wave, I had just a thin line coming around the top, and this wave is really starting to kind of push over at its peak. Then I've got another little wave cresting here. I did some of this really loosey-goosey texture with the palette knife. Then I did some splatter painting, and of course I got in there with my little number 1 round brush, and I did a little bit of texturizing on this one as well. So this one has a tiny but controlled spray, ocean spray, wave crest. And this one was really wild. I just took big gobs with my palette knife and I did pulling and texture all over. So this one I did a bunch of splatter, and I quite like this large crest we've got here. And this can sometimes happen just if your palette knife has a mind of its own and it gets some big texture. So I worked it, and I'm quite happy with this large wave here as well. This one's really cresting over quite a bit more on the edges here too. So with that palette knife, you want to take a little bit of your white paint, and I typically keep it towards, a little bit more towards the edge that I'm using. So my paint is on this side, this is the side. So you can get really thin lines with your palette knife. So if I want it to get bigger, over here, you may start with a little, so I can really just hold it almost parallel with the painting and pull across. And you can get really thin lines with this. But they've got a bit of grit to them, don't they? So I've just pulled a huge gob of paint on here. And I maybe want my wave to kind of start coming over. So I could pull on a fair bit of crest here. Now that's a big blob of paint, so this is going to be a huge crest. And I like to take the tip of my palette knife, I wipe off anything excess. And let's start with some of these smaller bits. And sometimes I'll take the tip of a dry palette knife and I'll just mess it up a bit. So I'm lightly shimmying. I want to keep some of that fun texture. It's picking up on the texture of the canvas itself. So I often like to start with some really fun random texture with the palette knife and then accentuate that with the brush. I may decide to come in again with a little paint just on the base of the brush. I might want this wave to kind of be crusting over and forward a bit here too. Pulling that paint on where I want it thicker. I've got a bit of a darker line here, so I might want to have another little wave down here. Maybe not coming right across. That's a big one. Whenever I get, say, a bit of a wave I do not like, I just take a damp paper towel. I'm just going to wipe the top of that. I want this one to be a bit flatter. So this is a way to get some fun texture in here, that you can get it with the brush as well, but the brush is always a little bit more controlled than the palette knife. And look where there's those little bits of green showing through. So once you've pulled off your crazy ocean spray, we can go ahead and tweak some of these. And if you want to have a few of these kind of whiter crests in your, maybe you want a few little bits in your waves at the back, you can get really thin lines with this too. Sometimes for the waves that are farther away, I prefer to use a lighter teal color as the pure white, just because they're off in the distance. But remember what a thin line you can get just by using, so I like to pick up on texture that's already there. I've already got a bit of a line here, so I may just accentuate a few of these. I've already got a wave here. You can get really, really thin ones. the little guys. It's just nice. It takes a bit of the control of the brush away when you use your palette knife like this. Okay. Go slow with the highlights in the back. We want to keep a lot of our focus. I just pull some of these where there's really maybe some really dead space that just, you know, your mind is like something needs to go there. Now I'll often come in with my little number 1 round brush back into those light green colors. You know, anywhere, somewhere at the tips of this, I like to do just a few dots. Just kind of tapping in. I love how it makes it look like the wave is just starting to get really see-through. Use a watery color so this doesn't totally dominate and take over. And now that we have pure white on, our ocean sea foam coming up looks really, really subdued. You could take your light blue, and of course you can accentuate some of these if you, for the bands that you really like, you can always accentuate some of those, really popping them out. And of course, if you do not have a palette knife, you can just get in with your little brush or your square shape brush and you can start tapping and pulling along the edge. And I often do this afterwards as well. So once I got the palette knife bits in, and I'll tap where I want. Maybe I want this to crest over. Ready? Whoosh, whoosh. Little pulls in the direction that the wave is coming over. So this is coming, I'm envisioning this kind of really falling over this way. So I'm going to pull this little bit down. So now you can look at the organic texture that your palette knife made and use your imagination to then accentuate, like maybe you want a little splash coming up here. And then it's starting to really crest over again. So I'm just tapping down with my little number 1 round brush. Okay, good, good. And you know, you can get quite thick with your paint here. I'm going to pull a few more little crests over. Okay. Now I find I like to stand back and really stare at my waves to see if it maybe needs some color or something's calling out to me. I want to show you guys how to splatter paint to get even more texture, but let's get down into the little bit of crest that happens where our water is washing up onto the shore. So, you know, down here, I like to use my little brush. You can use a palette knife down here too, but I like to just do little kind of taps and dabs. And you can go leave some of the dark, but look what happened here. I pulled this wave over top, and it really looks like this is actually waving, like it's almost jumping up over something. You could put a little rock under there. I think that's quite fun. We're just going to tap some depth into here. Tanya said it's 3:20 a.m. in India. Oh, you're a night owl today, or maybe you can't sleep. I'm often up quite late as well. Well, think the soothing sounds of the ocean. Of course, you've got beautiful bodies of water down in India. And the best food I have ever had. Okay. It is Tanya's birthday, so happy birthday to you. Here we go. Let's keep on with our waves. I'm going to just tap. You can hold your brush far away. And the next time you're on the beach, look at the waves, look at the size and colors that happen with distance at different times of day. Take photographs wherever you can of scenes that you really love. It's always really great when you can paint from your own photograph, or even on site if you're lucky enough to have a traveling kind of paint set. I love painting because it really makes us see the world around us and start noticing it in different ways. So I love pulling in the crest. And last but not least, I'm going to add some water to some white. And I'm going to pull a few lines here. And I often think of it as like squiggle shapes, like long lines, but sometimes they'll curve up. This is bits of sea foam and tiny crests on waves. Maybe really accentuating this little wave here, get a few little crests back here. Okay. Last but not least, I do like to splatter some spray onto the crest of my wave. Before I do, the splatter often makes its way up into the cloud. So if anyone does want to touch their clouds up and make them really, really white, you're going to do that the same as you did the first time, adding just a little blob, and even just highlighting some of the tops of them this time. So the clouds, I find, are something, if you really love super solid white clouds, you could start at the top, just fuzz them down so that they disappear, always using a bit of water. And the shape of a round brush, or if you can get yourself that round blender, they're really quite lovely. But you don't have to have specialty brushes. You can even use a square brush and the tip of a square brush. So if you want to tweak your clouds at all, do it now. Last but not least, I'm going to show you the splatter. I'm going to take a little bit of white, and whenever we splatter paint, we need to make it really, really runny. Okay, here we go. I'm adding lots of water to my paint. I'm making it as runny as milk. Runny, runny, runny. Runny, runny, runny. Okay. Runny, runny, runny. And for spot splattering, so I'm not going to splatter like this is outer space. I'm not going to splatter all over this painting. I'm going to hold my little brush very close, and I'm just going to splatter along the crest, and of course sometimes little dots of sparkle down below where the sun is glimmering off the surface of the water. But I do love how this can add some really organic, energetic brush strokes to our seascapes. I don't know if you spot them. I did 3 little seagulls in the corner here. I found this area of my painting really quite visual dead space, so I really beefed up the highlights and added the birds and lightened the pink, because my eye knew there needed to be something there. And your eye will tell you in a painting where there's an area in it that needs something. It could be a physical object, like I could have put a boat in there, but it can also be accentuating color in the background, like I really brightened the pink on this side. I added some little birds, I added more splatter. So it doesn't always have to be adding something physical. You can work with just your atmospheric space, adding some details as well. But let's go ahead and splatter, and then we'll take a quick peek at our paintings and see if there's anything we need to touch up. Make sure your paint is as runny as milk, and let's use a small brush since we only want this to go in a concentrated area, like our little number 1 round. You're going to hold your brush like this, pull those bristles back towards you, and then boo, and you're going to let it fly, and it's going to splatter. Hold it really nice and close to the area. It's like come really close, and then splatter, splatter, splatter. So I'm kind of splattering right across here. splatter right up. This is a huge wave. Getting a bunch right into the sky. This wave is full of energy, motion. I have aggressively splattered onto my sand. Can there be too much ocean spray? I don't know. Okay. So I was quite wild with the splattering today, but adding some splatter to your wave is the last official step to Seascape. Now this is a very basic painting. We're just doing water, sky, and sand. Please feel free to add things you might want in here. You know, a little heart drawn in the sand, little sailboats, little birds, the Loch Ness Monster, maybe a breaching whale. You can add your pink. You can make your pink almost unnoticeable and muted, or you can get it in there and really brighten it up so it's even brighter than this. I do hope you enjoyed this painting project with me today. We're going to be doing 1 to 2 lives on our YouTube channel community every month. So if you like this project, please feel free to subscribe to the channel. And if you hit the notification button, it will let you know the next time that we go live, which is going to be our realistic water droplets on a leaf, then our honeybee, and then we'll be tackling some patio lights. I'm going to stick around in case any of you have any questions. Otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this Sunday Fun Day Painting afternoon with me, and I hope you take care for the rest of your week coming up. Tanya says, I've done a beach scene 1 week before. It's drying. I'm 15 years old and it has turned out awesome. Oh, that's wonderful, Tanya. She says, mine was not as good as yours. I am going to be 40 this year and I've been painting since I was your age. So I've had a ton of practice and I paint beaches all the time. I bet your painting is really, really beautiful. I'm not sure if we can share pictures in YouTube comments. This is only our second YouTube live, but if we can, I'd love to see your paintings. Okay. Excellent. I don't see any questions popping up, so that is it for me, everyone. Take care. Have a wonderful day. Bye.